Hello and welcome back to my guide to IL. My guide is designed to help you decide what is best and to try and show you how to get the most out of every ship. But before we get into it, I'd just like to ask you to subscribe, like, share, and comment. All of those things really help me out and all of your support is massively appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into it. As you could probably tell by now, this video is about tanking, absorbing the enemy's damage, surviving and keeping all of your important ships alive for as long as possible to try and destroy the enemy's fleet before it destroys you. Now there is a surprisingly high amount of ways to tank and ships that can do it, but there's also extremes amounts of damage that can be done. So I'm going to show you how you can try and maximize your tanking efficiency, show you all the different mechanics and stuff, and I have done a video on how damage works, which has a lot of overlap with today's video that talks about how like armor and energy resistance works. So I will post that in the video description and I will cover it briefly but not in as much detail. I'll also cover things like evasion and other sorts of buffs and debuffs like that. And then we'll talk about healing, how that can be utilized, and then we'll just put it all together in a nice summary for you so that you can take this information away and use it for yourself. So let's get into it. So to start things off, my favourite front row tanking ship of all, well it's more of an off tank because it's got extremely high DPM, but the Taurus. It can have a pretty decent armor score of 36 when maxed. It doesn't have a ton of energy resistance, it's only got 2%, but you can also increase its evasion. It's a good off tank, but let's talk about what makes this ship actually good, and then we'll talk about a few others. First of all, evasion. Evasion is probably the most potent way to tank. It's simply not getting hit. It's essentially a dodge chance. Then you have armor, which applies to projectile attacks. When projectile attacks hit the ship, it will subtract damage equal to the armor value, but caps that off at 10%. So a projectile weapon will always do at least 10% damage. It doesn't have a lot of energy resistance, it's still got 2% though. That is just a percentage that's taken off an energy attack. If an energy weapon hits it, it will just take that percentage off. There's no way to get above 90%. I think the highest is the ST-59 with its EM armor maxed out. I think that gets to about 86 off the top of my head, but that's by far the highest. Most stays around the 2 to 10% mark, and there's a few especially good tanks that have 30-ish%, which we'll get into in a second. Aeris is another good one, although it is middle row. Most tanks are going to be front row so that they protect your middle row and your back row, but there are some middle row tanks that are pretty good, like if you're just trying to protect your back row, or if your entire fleet is just trying to tank, and you have a separate DPM fleet altogether. Middle row tanks do exist. Aeris is good, it can have a decent amount of armor, it's got good evasion upgrades. As a default, it's got plus 25% evasion, which is very good, and you can increase that by a further 16%, and then it's got a strategy which increases that by a further 40% when it gets low. Very good. And it's got, it can have some decent armor and energy resistance as well. So yeah, armor is essentially just reducing the damage from projectile attacks. Energy resistance, or energy shields as it's now called, is simply a percentage taken off energy weapons, and the evasion is a dodge chance, essentially the ability to not get hit at all, which is probably better than trying to withstand the enemy's blow, because the damage that can be done is actually ridiculous in this game sometimes. So yeah, the IO is another very good one. You could probably recognize by now a lot of the ones that I'm pulling out are as very good, have evasion. It's just super useful. The IO is good because it's got 15% evasion at base, and then you can increase this by a further 16%, as well as its very good armor system and damage. A very good ability to have is this like short range stealth coating, which is on various other ships. If you can get this, it increases your survivability by a lot because missiles and torpedoes can do a lot of damage. Stellar defenders are very prevalent. They use torpedoes, I believe, and they do an awful lot of damage. And these abilities reduce the hit rate of torpedoes by 5%, as well as missiles by 3% per upgrade, which is also pretty good because, as I said, not getting hit is just genuinely better than being hit and trying to sustain that damage. As we can see here, IO not fully maxed out, reduces hit rate by missiles by 12% and reduces hit rate of torpedoes by 20%. That can go up to 15% for missiles and 25% for torpedoes, which is very good in addition to its 31% evasion. And then we can get its armor all the way up to 80 armor. So any attack that hits it will be reduced by 80, any projectile attack. So any weapon that's got 80 or less damage will only be doing 10% because that's the cap. But any bigger weapon, it's just going to reduce that damage by 80, which is a fairly hefty amount. And energy resistance can get up to 30%. This is one of the higher forms of, or higher quantities of energy resistance that can be obtained in the game. CAS is a classic, it's a default, it's good, it's got lots of armor, lots of energy resistance. You can get it up to, well, I think over 100 from memory, and 30 energy resistance as well. That's also good. These are both front row ships. The CAS just lacks the evasion. So yeah, always try, if you're trying to evade or trying to tank, evasion is your number one go, as well as upgrades that can reduce hit rates from missiles and torpedoes. Ralliant is a underrated off tank as well. It's a frigate, so it's innately hard to hit. It's got evasion bonuses, and it can have the reduced hit rates by missiles and torpedoes upgrades as well. So yeah, as I was just saying, evasion, reduce anything that reduces hit rate against you is very, very useful, and then your armor and energy resistance is also quite useful. Also, for smaller ships like Carillions and stuff, especially if they're front row, increasing their hit points if you're using healers is also pretty good as well. Increasing their HP, because when they get low, they will retreat back a row. They will go from front row to mid row. Pretty much every front row ship, if not every front row ship, has this ability. And if you're using healers, it just means that they might be topped up a little bit. And if they have a evasion strategy when they get low, like the Carillion does, the Carillion Recon, when it gets low, it increases its evasion by 50%, which is actually ridiculous. And then the special version, the C variant, it's just even worse. But yeah, that will allow you to get those triggers off multiple battles, because it triggers once per battle, not like once per time being sent out of the base or whatever. So that's another little trick that you can use. So as I just mentioned, healing can have a few cool little synergies with those sorts of strategies that trigger when you get low, retreating a row, boosting evasion, all that kind of stuff. A lot of ships have it. Even the CV3000 carrier has a strategy in its propulsion system that increases its evasion by 40% when it falls to 20% HP. So it's fairly widespread. It's very useful. But healing tends to get overlooked in later game meta, purely because it just can't keep up with the amount of damage that's being done. But that's not to say it's completely useless. The Noma B is a pretty good healer. It's on par with the healing capabilities of most of the other two main destroyer healers, which are the Tundra and the Guardian. But it's for 6 command points. It's very, very useful. The Tundra is the other one that I have here to display. It's got pretty decent healing, I suppose, considering it's a healer. The healing in IL is just not up to the level that would be required for it to be solely reliable. Of course, it does keep your hit points up, and as I said, like if you're healing something that's got lots of evasion or armor and stuff, it's going to take more work to take those hit points back off than otherwise might be required. But generally speaking, if your options are having more really tanky, good, evasive, heavily armored ships, or having healers, you probably are better off with just having more tanky ships, because it just allows you to have more hit points overall and usually do more damage, because healing ships do literally nothing for damage. So yeah, but they can be quite useful. They do have some synergies, and they pretty much all have a strategy that heals themselves when they get low. So when they get low, you just pump them up to the nines and they heal heaps. That's providing that they don't get obliterated as soon as they get low, because they themselves are not very tanky. They will get ripped apart by enemy fleets if they get exposed. So that leads me to talking about what sort of ships you want to be using if your entire fleet isn't a tank fleet. Like, for instance, if you're having ships in your back and middle row that you want to protect, I talk about this in my fleet composition video, which I will post in the video description for you. But if you've got those ships in your back and middle row that you want to protect, your tanking ships that you've got in your front row, or your middle row if you're protecting the back row, you want them to be of the same class as whatever you're trying to protect. Otherwise, target priority will just not work in your favor, and you will probably regret some decisions and lose a lot of ships. So yeah, that it's very important. You don't want to use a bunch of cruisers and then have a bunch of DPM frigates and destroyers in your middle and back row, and then just have them get ripped up because things have decided that your cruisers are too big and they would rather shoot their optimal targets. I do talk about targeting in a separate video altogether, so I will also post that for you. It's just something to bear in mind if you're trying to protect certain ships from enemy fire. It's just very disappointing to see your back row getting sniped or your middle row copping a heap of firepower when you've got some big ships or two little ships. If you've got like frigates, evasive frigates tanking, and then you've got like battle cruisers and stuff, anything that lacks battle cruisers is likely to just chomp at them instead, which then makes your precious tanking frigates that were otherwise expendable now useless, and your valuable battle cruiser is now vulnerable. So just example of a tank fleet, it's currently flying to a destination to tank for my DPM fleet. It's consistent of 10 Taurus, which I haven't increased their tankiness for some reason that I now question. But they've got really good damage and they're innately tanky anyway. I might change that after this video, but yep. And then we've got 4 Winged Hussar because I had points left over and didn't really have anything better to do with those points. They've got good DPM. And then I've got Carillion Recons because I'm unfortunate enough to not have finished the special variant. They are evasive, they're tanky in that sense. And then I've got a bunch of healers just to keep their hit points topped up throughout the course of multiple battles. So when they retreat back to their middle row. Hopefully the healers do what they're meant to do, top up the hit points, and then in the next battle they'll be in front row, take a little bit of firepower, and then retreat again back to the middle row to avoid being destroyed. And hopefully I can farm a few pirates to level up my cruisers and not cruisers, my carriers and stuff, which I've just finished building in my DPM fleet that consists of 110 aircraft. So yeah, that's just that for you. I hope you enjoyed and found this useful. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out, helps with the algorithm, and hopefully helps me to grow and become more popular among people. Any suggestions, anything that you would like to see, please let me know. I'm happy to cover literally anything in the game. I've been playing for 8 seasons now over multiple accounts. I know what I'm doing, and I will hopefully see you soon. Take care, and I'll see you next time.